Good evening and welcome to the General Purposes Committee, 15th of January 2026. Just make a statement. This meeting of the General Purposes Committee is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. The recording of the meeting will remain online for 4 years, and if you are present in the chamber, you are consented to appearing in the recording and broadcast, which may also be used for training purposes. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence. We've not had any. I think somebody's on their way, so it looks like we'll have a full committee here. Declarations of interest. I don't know if we got any declarations of interest. No. The minutes of the meeting on the 16th of January 2025. We're okay to accept those?
Sorry, got a clunky paragraph, if that's okay.
What?
Clunky paragraph 18.55. It just reads a bit, doesn't make sense.
I noticed that didn't make any sense, but I thought if it didn't make any sense, it didn't really matter whether it was in or out. But it doesn't make sense, that paragraph. We'll have a look at it. Shall we just remove it?
We'll rewrite it.
You'll rewrite that paragraph and okay. 18.55. Above the threshold, contracts would be given to the most advantageous tender. This has been changed from the most economic tender and would allow the council, then these would be given, economic tenders would allow the council to be given added flexibility within the process when assessing value for money. That's what 18.55 is. Yeah, well, that, yeah, we'll make sure that we record a new paragraph that makes sense, okay? But other than that, we're happy with the minutes. Right. Next item is public question time, and we have no public questions, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, petitions and deputations. We have no petitions or deputations. Item 6 is constitutional changes. So who's going to introduce that report?
Can I suggest Tanya introduces it?
I'm sure she'll do a good job, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So this report has a series of proposed changes within it, and I would propose that we go through each section in turn, if that's, I think that makes most sense, and members can make comments. So the first part of the report relates to time limits at council meetings and how we deal with different items when we reach the different guillotines. So because the council procedurals are silent in some places. So the first one is how we deal with speakers on notices of motions and reports when we reach the final hour, so the 4th hour after we've added that hour on. What we do with notices of motion when we reach the 2 hours that we have set aside for notices of motion, that is in the council procedure rules, and so we move immediately to the mover to sum up and then vote. So that's the initial proposal here, is that that's what we would do in relation to notices of motion and reports that are being debated when we reach that 4th and final hour, rather than add on additional speakers. The other option is you could allow anyone who's indicated before we get to the 4th hour to still speak. You can do that. Obviously, that does have the effect of further extending the meeting and potentially negating the point of having a guillotine in the first place. So I think you just need to be minded why we've introduced some of those time limits, to make sure that those with responsibilities, caring responsibilities, things like that, can have a defined end to the meeting. So that is the first one, Chair.
one of the reasons why I brought this up was I think at one meeting where we had a debate that was just started very near the end of the 4-hour limit, and then we had the guillotine came in, and we had some comments being made, but then the press coverage actually gave an impression of what the administration's policy was, because I hadn't had time to say that we were in favour of considering this, but we had some concerns about it. So it was just the fact that it can be a problem if the debate is not complete and has just started. If you've just got a proposer and second, or one person has spoken, and then you get the vote, and then the reporting of that debate could not be necessarily completely accurate. I think what the county has done is, if members have indicated beforehand, the chair will allow those who've indicated beforehand, before the guillotine takes place, that they can then speak afterwards. Of course, you've got to be reasonable with that. You don't want everybody then just stick it up, add a whole hour to a meeting. And I think it might well be for those, whether we either do that or when we get to 5 minutes before the guillotine, that do we run out of time for that motion? Or do we just say we can't take that motion because we've only got 5 minutes, we can't do justice, unless, of course, it's unanimous. It's something that everybody's going to support, but if it's going to be one that there might be views, then should we start a meeting just 5 minutes before the guillotine's over? I think, it might be that we just don't start a meeting before when we've got to 5 minutes, if the guillotine's just about to take place.
I mean, that's particularly a problem if there's amendments that haven't yet been reached. So that's what creates the real uncertainty. If you only have time to maybe debate the main motion but don't have time to debate the amendments, how does that leave it? So that's why sort of just having a general, well, let's just extend it and finish off all the debates potentially is quite risky in terms of the uncertainty of the end time of the meeting, which is why we brought in the guillotine in the first place.
Any views? No, you were nodding, Steph, but... Declan.
It's just a question on 3.5 on the amendment. Is that separate from what you're talking about right now?
I can cover that now as well. So that is what the managing director was referring to. So at the moment, I don't think it's actually happened. So if we were debating a motion and we got to the guillotine, but there were amendments on that motion that had not yet been moved, it hasn't happened, so we haven't had to deal with it. So we need a process for how to deal with that. So what you could do is you just say that amendment, because the debate on the whole motion wouldn't be complete, and so that wouldn't be fair. So you could have the mover and seconder move the motion, but then of course you're not the amendment, but of course you're then not hearing opposing views. So I think what the chair is saying is really important. If you're getting towards the guillotine and there isn't going to be time to get through that debate, you've got an amendment or a couple of amendments on a motion, but you've only got 5-10 minutes left, you kind of need to be thinking about that, I think.
Yeah, thank you. This is quite a difficult one to think about because of the care and responsibilities of people. I think it really is important to recognise that. The issue about amendments there, I didn't know whether that could be covered off by not demanding, but maybe suggesting that if somebody submits an amendment, they could also put a short written paragraph explaining their amendment, because usually the amendments are just put and changed, aren't they? We don't really send an explanation. So if we did have to go to vote on amendment without debate, everybody understood exactly the meaning behind that amendment. I don't know whether that would work just for that one issue. In regards to the notices of motion, as much as frustrating as it can be if you don't get one heard, I think if anything's near to 15 minutes of the guillotine, we should take a vote on whether we just do that motion, or 10 minutes or something, to see if it can give it justice. Because, like you said, it could be something simple that we know everybody's going to be supportive and we can vote without too much debate. But if it's a really complex issue, it won't get the justice. And sometimes you really need that debate to thrash out your own decision-making process, so.
I think that 10-minute, last 10 minutes, if we're just about to start a motion that's not been debated, and when we're near the guillotine, seems like a good thing. We just ask the members if they wish to take the motion or defer it to another time. With the understanding, frankly, there's no time to debate it. So if it's one that's we're all in agreement with, then it just goes through, doesn't it? We just ask, we can all do a really short speech as well. I'm in favour of this, and I'll work this, and just something, and then we just get it done and dusted. So what's others' views on that? That we just request. I see nods around the table. That we agree that we ask the chair of council to seek the approval to start a new motion 10 minutes before the guillotine runs out. Anybody else? No?
One thing about that, though, as well, previously when we've had motions that we've run out of time and don't get heard, and, it happens, we've all got other jobs and things like that, we've got to be in a fit state to do the next day. But previously, I think I'm right in saying you have to resubmit the motion. Could it be that if we get to that 10 minutes and there is a motion and it's going to take too long, rather than it being resubmitted, it automatically goes on as the first motion at the next full council?
Well, no, it needs to be automatic. We could ask the Democratic Services to just double check with the original proposal. Second, do they want it on the next agenda? Because some motions might run out of time. A month later, they might not be worth having to doing.
Yeah, I guess with that, we're trying to avoid officers making assumptions that you want to continue with that motion. So I don't think it's too difficult to just send that email and say, I want to resubmit it. Sometimes people resubmit it on the evening, and so we know they want it for the next one. It would be for yourselves, I suppose, to decide if you wanted that to affect the order of motions, because we have some rules on order of motions which rotate around the political groups. So that would be bringing in an extra element to that order of motions, which might just complicate it a little bit too much. It feels to me like it's better for each group to decide, do they want to resubmit that motion, and do they want that to be their first motion, and then that will fit in with the order that we have naturally. I think we risk complicating things a little bit too much if we put too many additional rules into that.
Okay, I'm getting the view that the will of the committee is that we just seek council approval to start a motion 10 minutes before the guillotine. Yeah, okay, that's that one done. Question by members. That's the next one you've got.
Yes, so there's three somewhat unrelated or not necessarily related proposals there that members asked to be put into the report. So the first is around using any unused time for public questions and petitions and deputations to add those to questions to cabinet members at council. From my perspective, I'm not sure if that does happen in other councils. Drafting that is a bit more complicated, I would say. I would recommend sticking with the designated time slots, but it was asked to be in the report, so it's in there. The second one is around potentially removing the notice requirements for questions to cabinet members at meetings of the cabinet. So moving to oral questions in the way that we have them at council meetings, so you wouldn't need to submit them in advance. And then the third one is around extending the amount of time for questions to cabinet members at cabinet from 15 minutes to 30 minutes.
Declan.
as Tanya says, there are three separate parts of this. The first one about adding the unused time in cabinet from not used by public questions to members' questions. That sort of has already been happening, so I don't have an issue with that. With this, regards to the second proposals regarding oral questions instead of written questions, I wouldn't be in favour of that, and I'll tell you the reason why. We changed the written questions at full council to oral questions, and I personally don't think the questions are as good, but they're different in nature, and I think they do have their value, and they can be sort of more up to date, and that we don't have to sort of go into too much detail or technical detail. So that probably works for council. For cabinet, I would like to think that the questions submitted can be a bit more technical, and you get better quality answers if you do the written questions and put them to cabinet. Changing it to oral questions, I think, almost turns it into a mini council. I think oral questions for council, written questions for cabinet is the right mix, personally. And with regard to then extending it to from 15 to 30 minutes, that potentially could mean 45 minutes of verbal questions, which is just the same, or oral questions, just the same as council. And sort of, again, it's turned into a mini council. Whereas I think that what cabinet's supposed to be, it's supposed to be an executive body taking decisions, but with an extra questions added on. By sort of extending the questions, verbal questions, but potentially could be anything up to 45 minutes, you're turning it into something again which it isn't, and that becomes the dominant feature of the meeting, whereas it's not a cabinet meeting anymore. And as I said, I think the quality of the questions would go down. So personally, I think we should keep oral questions for full council, written questions for cabinet, because I think that works quite well. And that's just my view, basically. I have a sneaking suspicion other people will disagree.
I don't disagree, Declan.
Oh, right.
I do like having an option to have a written question as well, because I think it is different and it gives you the variety, obviously with the supplementary question as well. What I am keen to see, and occasionally it happens where we do go over time and we use up those 45 minutes, and I think that works quite well. I think when we're restricted to 15 minutes for any supplementary questions on our written questions, I think it gets very frustrating for everybody, and it can get a bit tense. So I think I like the way it works with the 45 minutes, but I understand what Tanya's saying, that if you're taking it out of those, it's very difficult. I don't know how you'd word it, but yeah, that was my preference anyway.
Yeah, can I just get some clarification? Because I think we're talking about two things. As far as I suggest that we just agree that the current procedure for questions at full council is fine, because I think what we were suggesting in the way that was drafted is that that if we don't use petitions and we don't use it, then we add in more minutes to full council's question time, and what we end up doing is eating into the time that we might have for motion and normal business, and that's why it's limited to 45 minutes. And we know unless the petitions are being put in, so I think we should just leave full council as it is. And I think the issue that was being brought to this meeting was related to cabinet, but I get the impression that everybody's content with staying with written questions. The issue is how those written questions are managed. At the moment, what happens at Shah Hall, there's 30 minutes, and but they are required to be specific to the agenda that's been discussed that day rather than anything. And two, public questions are priority. So the public asks the questions and then members dip in. Unless it's a really hot potato, then it's highly unlikely that the public are taking the time. But I've experienced it myself where they've taken up all the time of question time. And the chair has then extended the time period just to accommodate the people there. What we've got at the moment, we've got 15 minutes for public questions. Didn't use it up all all last night, and 15 minutes for member questions. And what we've been doing, the chair has been doing, is been basically giving members additional time periods to get through it. So I've normally watched the clock and come to about half an hour, and then I've said that's the end of questions. So I've basically used up any unspent member public question time to give the members it. I do think that a problem we have is the discipline of members in that everyone's who's been asking questions puts in 5 questions, and I think that's a problem because we normally only got 1 question each, or leaders have got 2 questions. We'd actually find it much easier if we say limited it to 2 or 3 questions per councillor, that we would actually get through it. And I would be quite happy to see the flexibility in the time period. You know, the report that we would use the unspent public question time to add it to member questions. But Cabinet lasted an hour yesterday, probably 1.5 hours, because it's a presentation of reports that have got Cabinet approval. And we can't get to the situation where we're spending all our time answering members' questions. And the other issue is the more questions are written, the more officer time has been spent on answering those written questions. And officers, we've got a very slim officer cohort in this council. And we've got to make sure that we're just overloading people with this. And then it becomes the day business is not being done, and that all we're doing is just having loads of questions, and some of them are effectively repeats of the other questions that they've already asked, or repeats of questions that might have been put in, or asking me what my New Year's resolutions were, such as one of the questions last night, which I thought was a pointless question. So I think we need to be flexible. You know, we've got to chair the meeting. What we can't have it being dominated by opposition members just asking questions and us not getting on with the business. Because I've also got to prepare, and every cabinet member's got to prepare a presentation because we're in the public domain of the reports we're taking. So there's so much headspace anybody's got to deal with all these things. I've got Sarge hand up. Anybody else who's got their hand? No.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. For council meetings, yes, although we can ask the questions verbally, we're quite restricted because if we have quite a few members asking questions, we might, as an individual, only get 1 question in. So the fact that we've got the option to put written questions in, 5 questions to Cabinet, I think that should stay. There's no reason why that should go, just to make life easier for you. And just like at Cabinet meetings, when members ask supplementary questions, just like a few minutes ago, when you've just been talking for the last 10 minutes, giving your explanation, that's what we find at Cabinet meetings really frustrating, is that you go on and ramble on with your answers.
Come on. Let's. No. Hang on a minute. Let's get to the business. Not so arguing about. I've got members who ask questions and make. No. Calm down. No, you calm down. All right. This is what we're getting as question and the attitude at questions.
He rambles on. He spends most of that 15 minutes eating into our time when we're asking questions, and that's not acceptable. And that's why we're asking for more time at Cabinet meetings so we can properly ask the questions. So I would like, my personal view is I'd like the 5 questions to stay, and I think we should extend the time for questions at Cabinet, whether you like it or not.
Thank you, Leader. I completely agree with Sarge. I think that he made a valid point. We need to keep the questions there, 5 questions as a minimum. written questions. Declan said written questions are better as well. And I appreciate you saying it leads into officers' time, but it's something that's needed. And also 5 questions, if we go to 2, there's sometimes that I can't make questions, sometimes Sarge can't make questions, it might just only be Andrew. And if you can only raise 2 questions and he's got 5 to give, then it's wasted time. So it's got to stay with the 5, it's got to stay with the written questions. 3.7, I agree with that. Members to use unused time from public question or petitions, or if we don't use that option, move to the option where we increase the question time from 15 minutes to 30. And I appreciate you do that, and that's very good of you at the moment. So it's not all take, it's a bit of give. And I appreciate you do extend that time, and that's good. But if we could fix the time rather than eating into petitions time, just in case that one chap that turns up and asks quite a lot of questions, if he turns up early, it then cause issues with the question time. So I'm thinking 3.8, no, but 3.9, yes. That's where I am with it. Cheers.
Okay. 3.
This business about whether people can submit 5 questions or not, would it not just be a simpler solution that most people, when they ask questions, different questions have a different level of priority to them. So to submit the questions in order of priority and just go round that you get your first, you're like a round robin. So it's one question, then the next councillor does the next question, and you just see how much time is left at the end and just carry on till the time runs out. Would that not solve the problem?
It'd be difficult to manage it because people come from the public gallery to ask questions. John.
Just on that point from Councillor Chambers-Debus, I was just going to say the same thing, which is at cabinet meetings they'd have to be keeping going backwards and forwards. So you'd lose a bit of time just shuffling around from between the chairs. The point I was just going to clarify, because I think from Councillor Chambers' comments there may have been some misunderstanding. 3.7 relates to council procedure, whereas 3.8 and 3.9 relate to cabinet procedure.
Yeah.
Well, Councillor Chambers said that he quite liked 3.7, so I just wanted to check whether he was thinking about that in the context of cabinet or council.
I was thinking about the context of cabinet, so thanks for clarifying that. So my position then would be do away with 3.7 and keep 3.9. That's correct.
Okay, I'm going to try and settle this. I'm going to try and settle this with
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, because I think I might have requested that one. I didn't mean council if I put council. I did definitely mean at cabinet. And I think at the moment, I think that, to me, that was a fair way of doing it. So if definitely not to take out of petitions and public questions if they're there, but if they're not, to let us use that time, because yes, the chair does allow us to do that sometimes, but also we are subject very much to the chair's whim on that. If you don't want them or whatever, we get very limited time and told end of questions, we have to stop at that point. So I just wanted to make sure that we were getting enough time allocated to ask our supplementaries. I think I get what Councillor Debus Chambers was saying, is that would be a good way of everybody getting one supplementary in, but it just doesn't work out practically with the way things work. But I definitely would like to see it increased in some way for members' questions, because otherwise it's difficult to get your supplementaries in, and I wouldn't like to see any deviation from the amount of questions asked, because as councillors we do have that right to information, and we've had, I haven't used them particularly myself, but we've had complaints about freedom of information. Now this is a good use and a way of doing it and getting an opposite response with a members also supplementary, so I think it's perfect.
Yeah, so my recommendation anyway would be not to do 3.7 and 3.9 at cabinet. It would be one or the other. I would say 3.9 because then it's definitive. You've got the 30 minutes. it's already being extended at the chair's discretion. And I think it has to be on the understanding then at 30 minutes, that is the end. It can't be, but we've got some more questions and we'd like you to extend it further. I think there has to be that understanding and compromise that if it is extended to 30 minutes, that's where it ends.
I'd like to propose that we agree that public question time at Cabinet remains the same, that it's 15 minutes for public questions and 15 minutes for councillors' questions to Cabinet. But we note that the chair is willing to use unused public question time to add additional time for elected members. I'd like to propose that as a formal proposition. Have I got a seconder? Have I got a seconder? Thank you. I'm going to take a vote on that now because we've had a debate. Those in favour of the proposition, please show. Those against? Okay. What are you suggesting? I thought that was to retain the question time as it is.
I think, yeah, bearing in mind it is already being extended at the discretion of the chair, that needs to be formalised and it needs to be, rather than being at the discretion of the chair, it needs to be, the time formally needs to be extended for every council cabinet meeting.
Well, the easy way to do that is we can just have a public questions first and cabinet and councillor questions second, and it's a 30-minute period for the total. It was.
I don't understand why you're coming up
Jeremy,
with
with
this.
the respect, Teresa Tabuso is still speaking and you cut her off. She's going to possibly propose
No,
it.
I didn't. No, she spoke and she put. I'm trying to come back to what Tree was saying, which I think was that you wanted me to use the unused public question time to complete for the half hour. Are you talking about members' questions being half an hour?
Yeah, I'm talking about members' question time being extended.
If I'm understanding correctly, you're saying no to 3.7, but yes to 3.9. So formally extending cabinet questions to cabinet members at cabinet meetings to 30 minutes. Public questions remains unchanged, 15 minutes, and formally extending cabinet question time to 30 minutes at cabinet meetings.
Which is 3.9.
I'd agree with that. I'm happy to second that. Well, I don't understand where Jeremy's proposal just came from, that we had to have a vote on it. That's not even in the report, is it?
No, it's made up.
And I made a proposal because I thought I had a possible agreement on what and was making a proposal to get something sorted on this. But I mean, I also would like to look at restricting the number of questions to three per member. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to fit it in the heart. You know, we overload the system, and then we get to the same position that members then want to go on and on and on because they've put in even more questions into officers. So I just wonder what members' view on that is.
You're fundamentally wrong, Jeremy, with your proposal and your thoughts. Thank you. So we've had a proposal and a second, I don't forget. So I've seconded Tree's proposal, so can we go to the vote?
Yeah, to extend the cabinet question time to 30 minutes. Those against?
So just to clarify, I think 3.9 is carried, 3.8 is dropped and 3.7 is dropped. Is that my understanding of the discussion?
And now I'd like to propose, in order to make sure that we don't we actually give time for members to share the question time out, that we restrict the number of questions per member from 5 to 3 questions per cabinet meeting. Yeah.
The one thing that I'd like to say is sometimes, and I know every member of the groups are entitled, but it depends on who's got what availability. Sometimes you do get 5 from me, but they're not always from me. They come from discussions within our group, who can come, who can't come, and who wants to submit those. So we work it out that way. So you're not always getting 5 from me or 5 from everybody else. They are ones we discuss in our group. So I wouldn't like to see that restricted at all. But I do take on board your point as well. And I won't ask unnecessary questions just to fill up 5.
On each occasion, it's always 5 questions. It's never 3, it's never 2. So it's always 5. And that makes it difficult to be fair to everybody, because I've got to the point where somebody's asked supplementaries on all 5, and then somebody else has asked the supplementaries on all 5, and then somebody else, and even you at the end of the process of not being able to ask your supplementary questions because it's run out of time. And that's a problem. And this is about time management. And it's about the Cabinet doing the business as well. So.
Yeah, no, I think the fact we've extended the time will help significantly. And I think the 5 questions has worked. The last cabinet meeting, I didn't put in any questions. I think only 1 member did. So it varied from cabinet meeting to cabinet meeting. And I think if you're trying to reduce the number of questions we can ask, you're undermining democracy significantly. And I'm not happy about that. And I think it's 5 questions as it is. Keep it as it is. And then perhaps that can be one that can be reviewed at the next meeting, whenever that is, if things haven't been working well or not. And we can see whether the 15 minutes extra we're getting has made a difference. And consider it again in the future.
And I think it's about reducing democracy. Is 45 minutes every full council, and there's 3 hours at every scrutiny committee asking members of the Cabinet questions. It's not as though members don't have the opportunity to ask questions. It's nothing to stop members asking questions in writing to Cabinet members either. Alistair.
Following council meetings, there's plenty of times Adrian's had a message and Andy Bell, and hasn't even had opportunity to get round to them, where time runs out. So when they can't make the evening meetings because they've got family commitments or work in the evenings, they asked me to put forward some questions, like especially as Sergeant Stephanie have said. So to reduce the questions isn't a possibility on my behalf, and I won't be voting for it. I will be voting against it. You're trying to curtail democracy and silence members and the council and the taxpayers, and I won't have it. I'm here to I'm sorry, Jeremy, I haven't finished. I'm here to represent the taxpayers in the city, and I'm not gonna have you silencing the most impoverished and deprived in our city. I think it's absolutely terrible you've been suggesting such a thing. Thank you.
I don't think all your questions are dealing with deprivation anyway, and I'm not silencing you at all. I'm trying to do the business properly and not get to the point where the Cabinet meeting gets overrun by just questions just for the sake of questions, and we don't get on with the job of doing the executive. You've got plenty of opportunity to propose motions and challenge policy at full council. You've got plenty of opportunity to ask questions at full council, and you do. You've got opportunity to ask questions at the Cabinet, and you have done, and you've had most of your questions supplementaries answered in the past. It's about managing the process and not allowing it to go ahead. Let's remind ourselves that the 15-minute limit is a limit that was set by the Conservative Cabinet in the past, and we always respected that in opposition. I always made sure that it was no more than 4 or 5 questions came in from my group to the Cabinet, because the business of the Cabinet is the business of the Cabinet, and they've got to get on with that job and not be distracted by dealing with some questions which frankly aren't necessary. And you've also got the opportunity to issue your press releases and make your statements and everything else. So you have plenty of time to carry on your job as an opposition group leader. So don't say you haven't got that time. Tanya.
All I was going to say is that there's nothing to stop members looking at what's on the schedule for any given meeting, noting that you've got 30 minutes. And if you've got 6 people with 5 questions, you know you're not going to get through those. There's nothing to stop members deciding for themselves, I'll ask 2 supplementaries or 3 supplementaries so that other people can have a go. You'll know what the time limit is, so that is open to yourselves.
Declan.
Thanks, Jeremy. One thing that hasn't been mentioned, that if you keep it at 5 questions each, it'll be the way people submit these questions. They tend to do them in bulk, from what I can see, because you get 5 from one councillor and then 5 from another member and then 5 from another member. And it's the same 3 or 4 people each time. And anybody else who wants to ask a question, they'll see that and think, is there any point in me getting a question at all? At the last, when we had our emergency council meeting just before we broke up at the end of December, there was an attempt to change the standing orders so people could speak more than once. And I voted against that for the simple reason that I was pretty sure if that happened, it would be the same 3 or 4 people getting up for the entire night, making different points and dominating the proceedings. But my letting everyone just speak once, it meant that other members got a chance to get up and speak. And actually, one of the things I found quite gratifying about that emergency council meeting is that quite several people got up and spoke with people you don't normally expect to hear from. And I thought it was good giving them the chance to speak. But if it was just only 3 questions, that means that there's potential there for other people to get different questions in as well. And I think sometimes people might feel intimidated out because they get crowded out by the mass of questions and that other people are putting in, and they don't get a word in edgeways. But it would be better, I would much rather we had more council members turning up at cabinet meetings, submitting questions themselves as well. I don't know what we do to encourage them to do that. But if we are to succeed in doing that and keep the 5-question rule, they'll never get a chance to get any questions in at all. So there would still be a separate challenge. Just because we've reduced it to 3, that doesn't mean other people are going to turn up. But it's really up to the rest of us to encourage more members to submit questions and come along and ask supplementaries. But if they keep on getting crowded out, that's not going to happen. So I think that's the reason why I would tend to support reducing it to 3 per member and try and encourage more people to come to the meetings.
It's 5 members that have been dominating questions at Cabinet, and 5 members that have always asked 5 questions. It's not the case from the Labour group leader who asks periodic questions and doesn't ask 5, or from the Labour group. But there's 5 members each time ask 5 questions. And some of them are just repeats of other things or continuation of the same story, and they're not. So the questions have not been of that calibre or quality, frankly. But Tree, you've got your hand up.
This isn't really a suggestion or a criticism, it's just an observation here. During scrutiny, I sit up there, so I get a good view of what's going on. And we have councillors asking questions. That's scrutiny. And quite often people will come along with quite a long list of questions. And the majority of the time, not all the time, but the majority of the time, and I can say this for every councillor that comes to that, they will say, if they've got a long list, oh, I've asked 2 or 3 questions, let someone else have a go. Why does that happen in scrutiny and not in other situations? People can behave like that in scrutiny. What is happening that means people aren't being encouraged to do that in things like Cabinet? And do we think that maybe with the 30 minutes, now people are going to feel less pressured? It's actually worth trying it to see if more of that attitude does take over.
Well, I will hope so. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that one of the problems has been managing it because you've had 5 questions and it just gets blocked out by the first 2 predominantly. And it's the same individuals each time, and it makes it very difficult to manage it. And there isn't that self-discipline in there in the way that there should be. But I have seen it. I was at scrutiny the other night, and one member asked question after question after question after question after question before anybody else had an opportunity to even ask their first question. So it doesn't always happen at scrutiny that it's shared out well. But it should be the discipline of members to realise that, you know, they need to just ask a couple of supplementaries and then move on and let somebody else have an opportunity. Make sure that if they've got 20 questions there and there's 4 of them there, that they make, or 5 of them there, for example, that they make sure that the last person has got the opportunity to ask their supplementaries, and it's discipline. I can't control that as chair. All I can do is take the questions in the order that are on the order sheet. Stephanie.
I think that was very unfair to say that we're undisciplined. There are many conversations where we've sat at the back and I've said, well, I won't ask that when there's other people waiting, so I'll let them continue. It does happen. But if there's 4 of us or 5 of us sat there, there's no way we could all ask our supplementaries. So we've extended the time. As Councillor Treaster said, let's trial it with this 30 minutes. There's no need to reduce that. I've already explained we do share these out from the group. I'm the group leader, Sarge is the deputy, Andrew is the chair of overview and scrutiny. So we take on the majority of those coming here to do those questions. But this is something we have a discussions in our group. And to say we don't, and we encourage everybody to submit their own questions. And I don't think everybody can find the time because of other commitments to always come to cabinet meetings. They're not in the cabinet, they're just general members with no extra responsibilities. So we take on that load for them. And that is what we are here to do. And I think it would be very, very detrimental to have this reduced. These questions are here for a reason. You have 3 opposition groups here now, so we should all get our opportunities. To say it was different when the Conservatives were in charge, the rules weren't different in this respect. It was just, if you didn't come, that's not anybody's issue. And yes, Terry doesn't always come, but when he has, nobody has ever restricted his time. I think we would all be fair and make way for him to ask his supplementaries because he doesn't do it so regularly here. And we do work together and we do have discipline, and I don't see anything wrong in it. We've got the extra time now. Just wanted to check my notes. And I think it would be undermining democracy, and it doesn't take anything out of the business you have to do that day in cabinet at all. You've had your cabinet briefing meetings, your separate group meetings, you discuss all these things. Every cabinet member has their own individual briefings with their officers on these reports. At cabinet, you have your time to present them to the public, and I don't see how us asking questions takes anything away from that process of yours. So I don't think and we do everything we can to encourage all members to participate. However, we take on that role for them when they can't make it.
Well, you don't need to necessarily attend to ask a question to cabinet. You can actually ask it, but I mean it would be good for you to encourage other members of your group to ask that question if that's their idea for a question, rather than for yourself to do it. It would be good to have other members of the council here to ask questions, and it shouldn't be dominated by 5 members. Alistair.
Thank you, Leader. I completely agree with Councillor Treaster with how well scrutiny is managed and people getting a fair share around the table. He actually goes around the table asking people if they haven't answered a question afterwards, and I think it's seconded. I think you're a deputy chair as well, and I think it is managed very well between the 2 of you. There's also a pre-meeting to that as well, where we discuss who's going to be asking what questions, and we have a discussion then. So I think scrutiny was a great example. However, cabinet's chaired very unsatisfactory, if I would say so. I attend with questions for culture, answered by Jeremy. Questions for planning, answered by Jeremy. Questions for housing, answered by Jeremy. There's sometimes no point cabinet members even being here.
I'm sorry, my members of cabinet answer questions. No, were you? No, you are making statements that are untrue. Okay, you're making statements that I ask to answer the questions and that cabinet members don't. That is untrue. No, I don't answer the questions. Unless I'm being specifically asked the question. And I'm getting rather fed up of you criticising the way the cabinet is chaired, because it is chaired, but the biggest problem is the disruption from some members of council that turn up and ask questions and give us long speeches and everything else, and we don't get through the business. And now it's going to get worse because you've extended that time. Now,
So thank you for interrupting me. I do find that happens actually quite often in cabinet meetings when we're asking questions. You have a tendency for doing that, so I'd gratefully respect if going forward you try your best effort to not press the button and interrupt people. It does put them off their train of thought, which probably gives the reason why people are giving longer questions than they originally gave, hence the reason you're doing it again, Jeremy. So closing statement is, you're criticising questions, you're saying people are going on. Yeah, your average reply is around 3 minutes per question. So they can't be that bad questions if you're giving such a long, lengthy reply. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
my group likes to give comprehensive replies to make sure that you've got all the facts and you haven't got anything wrong. Sarge.
Yeah, with due respect, who are you to judge and say what questions are sensible or not sensible, and of merit or not? Because at the December meeting,
No.
just give me that.
And who are you to judge my answers to your questions?
Me, please. In the December meeting, I asked a question about the finances, and when the cabinet, when the leader and the cabinet member became aware of the financial mess, I asked a question about overspend of 7.2 million since May 2024 when you came into administration. I asked a question about how many of our incredible staff may lose their jobs and our potential risk of losing their jobs. I asked a question about the increase in the bulky waste collection charges for the vulnerable in our communities. So to me, these are very, very good questions which residents in my constituents in a deprived area would be wanting me to ask taxpayers. Why are you saying that these are rubbish questions? These are not rubbish questions. It's because you don't answer them. So with due respect, don't disgracefully try and insult us and say that our questions are crap when they're not. Okay, that's the first point. And the second point is, when you were in opposition and there was cabinet meetings, you were there pretty much every meeting asking questions. I didn't see your whole group turn up. There was only 1 or 2 of you that would turn up to the cabinet meetings and ask the questions. So in the same way, when there's only 3, 4 of us coming to.
I'm going to.
Who are you to say that's the same for your? With all due respect, your own group members can come and ask questions if they want to. If they don't, then that's not our problem. That's your problem.
No, this is the problem. This is the attitude. And no, it's not. It's not. I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared. I'm closing the meeting. I'm finishing the meeting. All right, adjourn it. I'm adjourning the meeting. Adjourning it for 15 minutes. put to council?
Yes, so this was a recommendation in a cabinet report to allow effectively a template to go with notices of motion so that members can see what the implications are.
I'm so sorry, Tanya. Before we move on, what was the situation with the 5 questions? Because I just want to make sure I'm not lost here. Sorry.
There's been no vote on it.
Yes, so there'll be a template attached. That's already been proposed as part of that report to show so that members know the implications of motions when you're voting on them, and that would be dispatched with the agenda. I'm aware that other councils do that as well. It's just to provide background information so officers can explain what the implications of motions are. So in order to do that and allow for that template to be meaningful, we do really need a bit more time to be able to do that. So the proposal here is to bring the deadline for notice of motion forward. Currently, we sort of have a bit of a custom and practice situation in place where technically the deadline is actually noon on the Friday, but for whatever reason, historically, we've always run it to the Sunday. In practice, we actually get notices of motion quite early. It's not often that they're left until the Sunday. So I don't think this will have a huge impact on members. So what we're proposing is that it's brought forward to noon on the Wednesday before the council meeting. So it just gives that extra few days for the implications template to be completed and the agenda to be published the following Wednesday.
Any comment? Stephanie?
I agree. I think it's a really important thing that we do keep a tight eye on the finances at the moment, and that we are aware of what we're saying and what that's costing the council. The only one point I wanted to make about this is in regards to cabinet reports as well for projects being done. Now, I know they come from a different way. They are coming and, you know, they should necessarily have been costed into the budget. I don't know if all projects exactly are, but I think it would be good for members to have an indication in the financial implications part of that cabinet report. Also, you know, roughly how much this is going to cost the council, you know, where the money's coming from, or because I presume the officers do all that work in regards to that report as well. I just thought that would be an interesting thing.
Sorry, if I could just ask Councillor Chambers to clarify the question. Are you talking about just any cabinet report or particular reports relating to notices of motion?
All cabinet reports, just to, in the financial implications section, just to give councillors an idea of how much things cost, because, you know, we're quite blind on that.
I mean, that should be happening already, so we'll look into that if that isn't happening correctly enough.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. I was just really going to say I'm fully in support of these proposals. I think it should be. I have a slight concern, if anything. I know how under pressure our finance people are at the minute, and this is sort of giving them an extra couple of jobs. But nonetheless, I think on balance we should be doing it. So, and it was, I think, a recommendation from council. So we're committed to it anyway. So yeah, I do support it, and I think we do need the extra couple of days as a result for them to do the work in time. So I will be supporting it.
True.
I think it is really important that we have some sort of grasp of what these things are going to cost us. My only concern with this is, does the council and the officers actually have the capacity to carry out this work? Because at the moment we're talking about how stretched people are. Your finance team, for example, saying they don't have the capacity to be able to support an independent external audit. And also, what was my other consideration? I can't actually remember what the second bit I was going to say was. I'm sorry.
I mean, Cabinet can request advice on the technical advice on a motion, and we'll get that from the officers anyhow, and that's normal practice. So what we're doing is making sure that the motion's looked at and the officers provide public information on the fundamentally on the financial implications. And this is just overall guesstimate. It won't be sort of absolute figures, but is likely to cost officer time and likely to cost this amount of money in order to deliver the motion if it was approved.
Again, thank you, Chair, for letting me just answer that question. So if the motion is passed and it goes forward as a recommendation for Cabinet to consider, officers would be doing that anyway in terms of our advice to Cabinet. What this would be doing, this would be accelerating that process of the officer sort of assessment. And in answer to your question about whether or not we have the capacity to do that in an accelerated time, we'll just have to try it. If you decide to pass this or recommend it onto council to pass this, we will do our best to try to achieve it. And if we struggle, we will come back to you and tell you we're struggling to do it because there's this many motions and we've got this many people. But we can try it if you think this is a good idea.
Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. There's a question to Tanya, if that's possible. We've got the meeting on the 29th. So, for example, when would the deadline be for this council if it was already passed?
It would have been yesterday at noon.
All right, thank you. One thing, not saying it happens all the time, it only happens a few times, but motions have gone in maybe 3 days before the deadline, and then sometimes you get a response back. Not all the time, only has happened a few times, however. And it might be 11:50 before the deadline, with 10 minutes to go. So the problem is I've then got to rewrite it to make it acceptable with 10 minutes to go if I just jumped on that email as soon as it received. So that can be an issue. Is there anything that we can do around that?
As soon as we can.
I mean, it's no different to now that might happen now with the later deadline. And actually probably worse because they come in if we go to that far deadline, it's on a Sunday. So the officers wouldn't be looking at it until the Monday. And by that point, it's probably, it's too late. We always try as far as possible to respond in good time. The onus is on members to submit a motion that complies with the rules. We will always try to work with you to amend or suggest amendments that mean it's palatable. I think we just have to carry on being flexible with that. We will always try our best to do it in good time. And if it goes beyond the deadline and it doesn't require a major reworking, we will still allow that motion. We're not going to go, well, you've not come back to us immediately. It just depends, I think, on the situation and how much reworking of that motion is needed.
Thank you. On that basis, I'm happy with the proposal.
Is everybody happy with that? Yeah, that's approved. Next item is the webcasting protocol, is it? Yeah.
So this is an operational webcasting protocol. Obviously, we have been webcasting our meetings for a while now. So we have sort of been operating within this overall protocol. It's just showing it to yourselves, asking you to note that these are the practices that we're following. The webcasting protocol itself is not going on to council for approval. It's just for noting. There is a formal amendment in the protocol on recording at meetings, which is part of the Constitution, that is required to be approved by council. The protocol itself has been prepared by looking at best practice from other councils, taking in what other people do and adapting it for what we think works for this council. So happy to take any comments on the proposal in the papers.
Yep.
Yeah, I did have some issues in regards to this. I think the one issue, if I find the page, was the part that was being taken out of the Constitution that then referred to the protocol. So I'm just trying to find the page so I get the wording right. There it is. So it says, it takes out, such meetings will be broadcast in full, excluding any confidential items which may need to be considered in the absence of the press and public. And it puts in that place, these arrangements will be operated in accordance with the council's webcasting protocol. Now, the reason why I take issue with that is I think that all meetings should be broadcast in full, excluding any confidential items or other legal reasons, something along those lines. Because if you just refer it to the protocol, then that's part of the constitution that then is completely out of the hands of the council from then on onwards, because the protocol can be amended without any permissions. So I wouldn't really want to see any exclusion out of the constitution in regarding to the meetings being broadcast in full. On top of that, I think I have requested a few times. Now, I do understand that there will be a need sometimes for edits to be made, etc. I understand there would be legitimate and legal reasons for that. But in the sort of the point of transparency, openness and freedom of speech, I still believe strongly that there should be a log made of any edits with a detailed explanation of why that edit was made, and then that can be scrutinised by overview and scrutiny or something, I don't know, every 6 months, just so there was a log and there is somebody overseeing the work being done that is going to be restricting what should be a public meeting. Like I said, for the right reasons, but somebody having overall control of that with no checks and balances is a bit concerning. So that was my first point, was the logs of the edit and that coming out of the constitution. And then there was another part in the protocol that referred to the police. Yeah, that was it, 3.5. And said if members or officers find they have been covertly recorded against their wishes, the authority reserves the right to take any appropriate action, including referrals to the police. Now, I just think that message should be slightly clearer in that a referral to the police should only be in relation to criminal or the suspicion of criminal activity in that, because to my understanding, there are civil remedies in regards to covert recording sometimes, but police, it's a bit of a harsh message to put in there, to say that people will go to the police. I've never covertly recorded anybody, and, you know, I haven't got any wish to do so. But there are incidences where somebody covertly recording something might be really important. There are whistleblowers, there are people that are protecting themselves of any reason or something. So I think it's just a hard-handed threat for what shouldn't be people being scared of doing that if they really feel that they need to. So there was that point, and I did have one other point, but I can't remember what it was now. I think I've got it here. I'll leave that and let everybody else come back, and if I remember, I'll...
A response to those points.
On your first one, we were trying to find the paragraph that you were referring to, and we couldn't find it in time.
So, the paragraph in the Constitution that was being removed from the Constitution, that one.
25.01, recording of meetings.
Some of it's deleted and some of it's...
So your
Thank you.
proposal for 25.01 is what?
So my proposal there is that the wording of such meetings will be broadcast in full, excluding any confidential items which may be considered in the absence of the press and public. I think there could be an addition there that gives, or if illegality or harassing or something that is deemed illegal needs to be removed. But if you put it all in the hands of the protocol, you've taken it out of the Constitution that we record our meetings in full, with exceptions of illegality or confidential.
But the protocol does list the reasons why recordings would be edited or not broadcast, doesn't it?
Yeah, but if you take that sentence out of the Constitution, now constitutional changes need to be approved by council, don't they? So, but the protocol doesn't. The protocol is a document that can be changed by officers. So that was my point.
I mean, it could be that if to give you the assurance you're looking for, we could agree to bring changes to the protocol back here. If that would give you the reassurance.
I suppose that does a bit, but I still think it should state in our constitution that we record our meetings in full.
I think all we're trying to do with this is not have to have all of the detail of a protocol in the constitution. So what we're doing is it's simply just to say refer to the protocol for all of the details around the recording. There was a decision that we will record meetings. That stands.
Why don't we just change these arrangements will be operate in accordance with the council's webcast casting protocol, and any amendments to the webcasting protocol will be presented to General Purposes Committee for approval by members.
I still
And then
think,
by- and
what's
then
the
by-
harm in leaving it in our constitution that we record broadcast meetings in full? It's just a stronger, mechanism, and it makes no difference. You can still refer to the protocol, but the protocol would have to then come back to council if it was going to be changed. It's just to have in the constitution that that's what we're doing. I think it's really important.
I think the problem is if you do that, it's then almost contradictory with some of the statements within the protocol, because of the reasons we're saying where things might be edited. So the two don't sort of work together, if that makes sense. So if we're saying in there they will be recorded in full stop, but then in the protocol we're suggesting reasons for edit, it's contradictory.
Yeah, but I don't think the protocol should be stating that we won't broadcast in full. I think you could do it in a very short sentence in the constitution, in that we will record in broadcast in full, excluding any confidential information or anything that could be deemed illegal, and that would be harassment or whatever.
I mean, the range of reasons why you might want to edit a broadcast are set out in the protocol. So I think the sentence needs to refer to the range of reasons that are in the protocol. If you try and list the range of reasons why you might not broadcast in full in here, then you're sort of doing away with the point of having a protocol, but you're also potentially contradicting it. So I think the easiest way, I think, to achieve what you're saying is just to say such meetings will be broadcast in full, except where edits are made for reasons, for the reasons set out in the protocol, or something like that. The protocol somewhere in this document, otherwise there's no point having a protocol. And the protocol goes into much more detail than this simple paragraph does about why you might wish to make an edit, and the fact that your point about keeping a log where you do make edits, the protocol sets all of that out. You don't really want to put all of that in the constitution, I don't think.
No, and I'm happy then if it says broadcast in full, except for what goes on in from what the protocol lists, and then the protocol comes back to general purposes. It's just so there's more checks and balances in place. That's all with that one. Thank you.
Let's see what others have got to say. I've got Alistair, and I got Trina and Vicky, and then Declan, in that order.
Cheers. Thank you, Chair. I also believe that the wording in full needs to be kept in the Constitution. I think it's really important to give public trust that we're doing everything in full, and not undermining public visibility. Any edits to what I propose to be added to the protocol, that any edits should be listed out, and councillors can see the list of edits and reasons why. There shouldn't just be edits willy-nilly and people they're watching the video back and things have gone missing and nobody knows why it's gone missing. So there should be a list of edits and reasons why, and there should also be a full copy on file. If another member makes a complaint about another member in the meeting and said they're being harassing or they're upsetting them, and that's been edited out and they've lost that copy, that's gone. They might need that for police reasons. So edits need to be documented, what was edited and the reasons why it was edited, and that should be given to councillors in a report every full council, just a small report at the back. From 6 till 7, this was edited out for confidentiality, closing council reasons. I think that needs to be added in here. We need to know and the public need to know what's going on. I think that's the only way to do it. I think we need to be transparent and visible, no limit principles.
But I think that's the case, isn't it, in the protocol, that any edits will be listed separately, and the edits will be
Where is that?
on file. Well, John will that.
It's the I mean, I understand what the suggestion is made, and the protocol doesn't quite cover what Councillor Chambers wants, I think. It says in 2.2.8 of the protocol, where practicable, a record of the decision will be maintained by the council. I think what would satisfy perhaps Councillor Chambers is if we said a record of the decision would be published on the website, and then it's very transparent what decisions have been made. But we could amend that 2.2.8 to make clear that the log of the edits is published.
If you could do that, that'd be really good. I'd be more than happy to agree with the protocol then.
And we all agreed with that. We had it. Yeah, no reason to hide any of the edits. You know, but we know why some of them are put in place. But I got three.
Right, this kind of, I don't know why this is buzzing, it's weird, maybe it's my biscuits. That's a bit better. Oh no, it's not better. It's about really, this section, 2.2.10, about any elected member or officer concerned that because of being webcast, they might be at risk of physical or psychological abuse. Now, every time somebody walks into this council chamber to a recorded meeting, especially people who hold jobs where, sort of public-facing jobs like teachers, medical staff, social workers, we are putting our careers at risk because people take the footage and alter it, and then there are some really horrific websites out there which are ruining careers. I know from my own experience, and also from talking to other members, that often within the chamber, we do not stand up and say the things that we actually feel we ought to be saying for fear of the impact that it will have on our careers because of the way people behave when they edit films and things like that. You know, it happens.
Donald Trump, BBC.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly, all over the place. For me to feel comfortable with what's being proposed about editing is as well as saying about what has been edited, and there being a list of that the original film must be kept. It is the only way we can protect ourselves.
That needs to be.
Okay.
That needs to be.
Because I couldn't work out where it was on there, but...
Yeah, that provision is in there. It says in section storage and retention of webcasts in section 7, it says somewhere in there.
I couldn't find reference.
Is it in there?
Thought it was.
We thought it was in there. We'll just check, see if we can find it, because that was definitely in a version of this document, that even where there's an edit, you retain the original. But I'm just trying to find it.
Can we include it? What Teresa is saying, also what I've said about the log of edits on the website, if we can include those two, unless anyone's against that.
Vicky, I got you next.
That isn't in there. We will, if at the will of the committee, we'll add that back in. That's what I meant. Yeah. If that's not in there, the original will be retained. Then we will add that back in. We thought that was in there. And the log of edits on the website, published on the website. Yeah.
I don't know if it's ever happened that anything that's been videoed with us in has been doctored or changed. It has.
Yeah.
And then appeared on social media, for example. What are the consequences of that happening if you can prove who's done it or the platform that it appears on? I know Steph mentioned things being illegal. I know, I don't know why it's doing that. Maybe it does. Is there law? Yes, thank you.
The only law that we're aware of that tackles that sort of thing is the new online, well, I say the Online Safety Act. So if and the protocol makes reference to the Online Safety Act. So it says in 2.2.8, editing may be undertaken in light of the provisions of the Online Safety Act and any other enactments protecting the safety and reputation of elected members, officers and members of the public. Editing may also occur in other lawful circumstances. But in answer to your question, if someone creates a recording that people believe breaches the Online Safety Act, taking edit from our recording, the person concerned or anyone else should make a complaint to the police, because the police are the enforcing authority for the Online Safety Act, not the council. But that's the main piece of legislation, I think, that you would have to fall back on. I mean, what we have put in the protocol is a copyright notice in section 8, and that says webcasts remain copyright and property of the council at all times and must not be altered or edited in any way.
Stephanie. Well, I had Declan next, then you.
Thanks, Jeremy. First of all, a question, just a clarification on 3.5 in red, which is the changes that we're proposing. It talks about if members or officers find they have been covertly recorded against their wishes, the authority reserves the right to take any appropriate action, including referral to the police. Are we talking about if this happens after the meeting has been adjourned? Because during the meeting we are in a public space. And the other point that I wanted to raise, it's not a proposed change, but at the end of 3.2 is a sentence I never saw before, and it says, if a member of the public does not wish to be visible at all, they are advised that they should not attend in person. That seems a bit anti-democratic to me. So two questions arise from that. If we have whenever speakers from the independent group are speaking, you quite often can see people sitting behind them.
Is there any part of it?
Is it? Well, yeah, could we put a petition up? I don't know. I'm assuming nobody's ever asked to have their picture.
If you read the blue sign over there, it actually has instructions for members of the public saying if you're in this room, you're effectively consenting to being recorded. So we are warning the members of the public that do attend of that consequence at the moment.
I was actually going to suggest that. I didn't realise it was already there, but now you've mentioned it, I think it's been there for quite a while. Yeah, okay, that's good. That's the only point I wanted to make, really. So I'm happy with the amendments as they are.
Were you not drifting into the protocol on recording at meetings? Are we taking them together? Stefan is next.
Yeah, in regards to the paragraph as well, I mentioned it, and it was the reference to the police. Now, my concern is around that is that there will be times where something like that, somebody could need to prove something that it is right for them to do that. And I don't want, there could be, and this is no inclination to anything that anybody's going on, but there could be harassment or something like that, and the only way that this person could prove that would be to record it. So I just wondered whether we could put something in the protocol just at the end, like a little bold bit that something says nothing within this protocol, and I think I looked at the legislation, nothing in this protocol affects your rights under things like the local openness of Local Government Act or your statutory rights, just so people aren't sort of intimidated into not doing something that could protect them.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we could look to see if we can add something into that, either that section or the protocol. I mean, the paragraph in red in 3.5 is effectively just saying the authority reserves its rights. So it's just stating our legal right to do this if we believe that is the right thing to do. It's not saying we would do it in every occurrence, but we can look to also put in the sentence that you've suggested.
Thank you. Yeah, because it just somebody that was quite timid or needed to do that, they could be intimidated into not, sort of protecting their rights under certain legislation. And then the other thing, there is an issue with protection of privacy. And I suppose while we're talking about privacy and things, do we have any protocols in place that would protect somebody that wanted to ask a public question? I know there's certain things on the register, say somebody was fleeing domestic abuse or something, that they can be silent on it, can't they? They can be hidden. Can they still be hidden on the register if they wanted to be?
On the electoral register, people can register anonymously, yes.
Is there any way people can participate in the democratic process at all if they were to write to the council and say something? Do we have anything in process like that? Though somebody could still, for one reason or another, they could be under police protection, but they're not restricted from participating in the democratic process.
So obviously, questions from members of the public are submitted in advance, so they can submit a written question, decide that they didn't feel comfortable to come along and be filmed asking a supplementary question. Currently, we do print the names of members of the public in our questions, so if they were to ask us not to do that, we would not do that. So I think that's the main provision, unless you were to change the constitution in other ways.
But they would put their original question in writing, they would get it in writing, and there's nothing to stop them adding a supplementary or supplementaries in writing. They can do that without it becoming public knowledge. Sarge is next. Oh, sorry, go on.
Sorry, could I just feedback on that? Is there anywhere within our website that we could make that very, where we put, if you want to question the council, that we put a little note that there are provisions in place if you've got, I don't know how you'd phrase it, but, make sure people aren't just using that because they don't want their name there, but, that there is a serious reason why they would be at risk if they did provide their name.
We can look at that, yeah.
Sarge is next.
Thanks. In the protocol, the webcast protocol, paragraph 7.4 states that the managing director and or the monitoring officer will, in consultation with group leaders, make a final decision on removing any webcasts. To date, have we, that particular end, 3 words, removing any webcast, can easily be interpreted as removing the webcast of the whole meeting? Presumably that's intended to say, part of or section of the meeting webcasted. And the question is, have we implemented this protocol within the last sort of 3 or 4 years? And if we have, then has that been done in partnership with the group leaders? If we have made any edits, how many have we edited? How many edits have we made? Is this quite common, or is it just every now and then as a one-off?
So I'd like to hope there wouldn't be a reason to remove an entire webcast. So the intention certainly within the paragraph is about edits. We have edited 3 in the whole time that we've been webcasting. I'm not certain whether consultation with all group leaders has taken place or whether it's possibly been with the relevant ones at the time, but that's certainly something. I mean, that's the purpose of the protocol that we're approving now, is to make sure that we do have those processes in place. So going forward, we can ensure that happens.
Because if we have the protocol in place, but we're not adhering it to ourselves, then it's pointless. It's just a piece of paper that we're not even following. So on a separate point, can I ask if it can be looked into whether in the past, on the 3 examples that you refer to, whether all group leaders were consulted and met with the managing director or the monitoring officer and agreed? And if not, why not? That's a separate point that I wish to put forward as a proposal, if I may.
So the protocol is new. Sorry. the protocol is new, so we haven't followed that. If we haven't followed that process, it's because we haven't got the protocol in place at the moment. So that's the intention now, is to have that protocol so that we have a process going forwards.
Finally, there's a couple of points I wanted to make, and one was 7.1 on the storage and retention of webcasts. I mean, they're retained for a 4-year period, but then they just might be lost forever. And I just don't see why they can't be archived at the county archives or whatever, because we don't have the same quality of reporting about what happens in meetings like there was in the 1980s, when the whole pages of the Citizen would be reporting what happened in the evening before, and we'd have a half a dozen journalists there, and so there's a lot of stuff's not here. So it's and for anybody wanting to maybe study the City Council in its last days before LGR, when it was web broadcast in 100 years' time, and they said, well, they were all webcast. Well, and there's no evidence of any of it. It just seems to me a ridiculous thing to do is to just shred it. I mean, we know the problems of the BBC, don't we, where the really brilliant programmes were destroyed, and they only finally find it out because somebody recorded it and stored it on their home video. So I just wonder about that. Well, I'd really like to see whether we can actually have real advice of how that could be done, and not that the archives don't want to do it, because it won't take up much space for digitally archived stuff.
So we have considered that point. Ultimately, webcasts contain personal data. They are your image. Members of the public who are included on those webcasts. Data protection legislation dictates that we should only keep personal data for as long as it is necessary to process it. There is a lawful basis, which is archiving in the public interest. However, you need to be able to justify that. The minutes of the meeting are the lawful official record of the meeting. So I'm not convinced that you could justify keeping the recording on that basis. I have looked at what other councils have in their protocols. I haven't found one yet that says they're keeping them indefinitely. Most of them seem to be around 4 years. Some of them are a lot less, 6 months. So that is our position from a data protection perspective. Additionally to that, if you do keep them, even now, you do have to be able to, if somebody asks, I want to be removed, they want to exercise their right to be erased, you have to go to best endeavours to do that. So if you're trying to do that for an indefinite period, that becomes very difficult and unmanageable. At the moment, 4 years, nobody's asked for us to remove them yet. So, that's easier to manage, but you do have to have those protections in place for individuals if you do that.
I think you need to keep it for a period of time, because if you just wipe it out and then somebody then edits it and then, as I said, then publishes it, and you can't backtrack to find out whether you said that or you said something differently, and the minutes of never accurately report the full conversation. They summarise the conversation, but they don't actually necessarily word by word. So I just wonder whether it's worth. I'm not forcing the issue, but I think it would be worth having some proper some advice on this, because I'm not convinced on the data protection one, because we're in the public domain. But I don't know what others think.
Given the technology that we seem to have now, rather than storing footage, could we not store transcripts? And then if there is members of the public involved, obviously you will not see them, and you could redact their name from it.
I mean, the minutes is the official record of the meeting. We are storing the minutes go to the archives. Personally, I don't think it's necessary. Do we have access to the transcripts? No.
Yeah, I have sympathy with what Jeremy's saying, is that you almost feel like you're destroying history if you start deleting them. But if we're keeping them for 4 years and we've only been doing it for 2 years, that gives us 2 years to find a solution to the problem. So I'm sure at a future General Purposes Committee, we can bring this back if somebody can come up with an answer. But I would like to think that they're kept. But yeah, I understand the legal situation, but as things stand, I don't think anybody's got a solution tonight, but it is something we definitely could come back and look at.
Steph?
I just want to say I do agree with you on this one, Jeremy. I think it is a nice historic thing to do, and if nobody else is doing it yet, why not? Don't we try and be the first ones to sort of record this? It might not be that interesting, but we've got 9 viewers tonight, so
There you go.
it could be very contextual to schools, etc., in history lessons. Who knows? It really could have value. I've been down the records office and looked up things from hundreds of years ago, and it does have a value and an interest. So if there was a legal way around it, I would like to know about it.
I think people might watch me and Sarge. And I could say I haven't fallen out with him. Sometimes we have a spat. Alistair, then I've got Vicky.
I think it'd be a good idea, purely for the fact that if Greater Gloucester did somehow slip through the net and they're having a bit of an off day and they did think, okay, let's give it a go, I'd like to be able to go back past the 4 years and say, this is the guy who made Greater Gloucester and put us in this terrible, terrible situation that we're in now. So yeah, so I'd agree with it. I'd agree with the recordings of the videos and ask them to be kept. But on the other note we've been speaking about, it's not a criminal offence to secretly record audio or video in a public place. So you can have whatever protocols you want on the system and say that you're going to contact the police. But if it's not against the law, it's not against the law. So there, and it basically includes streets, parks, most public buildings, not courts. So something to be aware of, Jeremy.
Should that be removed then? Is that what-
Well, you can go on YouTube and see people walking around the centre for 100 years ago, Victorian times, colorised films as well. But I'm not sure everybody gave their permission for that. Vicky?
I was just going to say that somebody somewhere is keeping these recordings. We just don't know who they are.
Let's have some further consideration. Yeah, further advice. The other one on 1.4 was to do with this proposes that this protocol recording including sound, photography, film, and any type of equipment, including mobile phones. I do think we ought to reference Google Spy spectacles, because we did have a member of the public sitting in the public gallery with some of them on, and I noticed that same person spoke to a Democratic Services officer beforehand at another meeting, and I do think I've got no problem with people doing that, because they can do that with a mobile phone, but they just need to they ought to let people know that that's the situation, so members know. So can we add spy spectacles, or what, I don't know, buttonholes or something like that? Covert, yeah, people should just say, I'm recording this meeting and I'm sitting over there. I'm not worried about the device because we're recording the meeting as well. But I think a member of the public should make that clear, particularly as a point Declan made, is if we do adjourn a meeting like we did today, or if they adjourn a meeting that, or people walking around, then people need to know that that person's got a recording device on. What? I don't know whether they have to let us know.
The thing, Jeremy, is
But I think if we put it in the protocol, then if they don't do that and then they make a big fuss about it with publishing it, then we know that they've broken a protocol. And that they
just be careful with what you say, Jeremy, and then you'll be fine.
Yeah, well, I don't mind what I say. I'm the same with you as well. Right. Other than that, are we okay? No.
Well, the next item of the report to go to now.
Well, there was just a little house. I did read in the reports, and I can't remember where it is now, but it said something like, if you're asked to leave because you're disrupting, you need to leave with all the recording equipment has to go out the room or something. I thought that would be quite difficult because every laptop and phone and I can't remember where it was, but it's not that urgent. But if you just have a look, it did say something like all recording equipment would need to be removed from the room. I think that was in the protocol, I think, equipment. Let me see. 3.4. That was it. Where any meeting goes into exempt session, all recording equipment must be switched off and removed from the meeting room.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I get that, but what I'm saying is it's just terminology-wise, if you had to get everybody with their laptops and phones out the room, you'd be really struggling. That was my only point. The practicality of, if you read that literally.
I understand what you're saying. I mean, I think we're talking about, you know, members of the public and members of the press and asking them to leave the meeting and take the things that they've got with them. I don't think we're suggesting that members need to take their phones and laptops outside. So I understand what you're saying, but hopefully common sense applies.
We're okay to, we'll obviously have those protocols and the wording refreshed for full council when it goes through to there, but and we can double check that officers have got it all right from what we've been discussing. We can watch the webcast, yeah, that might not help you. Right, next one is the size of the Audit and Governance Committee.
Okay. Yes, so there was a request to review the size of the Audit and Governance Committee. So the report contains information on the current size and the political proportionality of that, and then 2 further options to demonstrate how many members you would need. Option 2 is difficult because it does result in a variance, and it would mean a group having to decide not to take up one of their seats. 11 members, quite an additional burden. So those are the options that are in the paper for you to discuss.
Comments? Alistair, you had your hand up first.
Currently, there's 7 committee members. There's 7 of us here today. I think it gives enough time for debate between all parties and people. I think if we increase it to 9 or 7 or 11, you know, the situation where people can't speak in depth, you can have too much speaking, too much going on. I think keep it the same myself. Keep it the same size is probably where I am at with it.
And yourself, Declan, you've got a hand up.
I'm inclined to agree with that. I think this is a solution really in search of a problem. The issue, I think, with the Audit and Governance Committee, and I think what we should be focusing on, I think we should be there should be more training for audit and governance members. It does tend to be quite technical, and I quite often find, at least in the days when I used to chair it, a lot of the stuff that I used to see was stuff that I was reasonably comfortable with, but a lot of the members weren't. But if you read the documents carefully enough, you could work out what it is, the points we're trying to make. But I think a little bit of training on the reports that do come before audit and governance and what they mean and points to look for, I think would be extremely useful. Sometimes I think members might be slightly intimidated when they don't really need to be, because a lot of it's just really common sense. But if they could get a little bit of training, give them a bit more confidence, I think the size of the committee would be absolutely fine. And there are already 1 or 2 members there, I think, who are very good. And under a new chair, I think there was a bit of a learning curve. I think she's a very good chair as well, incidentally. It's just, I think that a little bit of training would go an awful long way, and I think would pay dividends, and you could achieve the results without increasing the size of the committee. So I think that's what maybe we should be focusing on.
Tree next.
I've just noticed if you look at option 2, which is increasing to 9 members, the maths is wrong. With the numbers that you put, it would actually be 10 members, not 9.
That's the point.
Yeah, so
You can't go up without disrupting the proportionality. So one group would have to drop one to get to 9. So you have to go up to 11. And bear in mind that Audit and Governance Committee is not one that you actually get lots of members of your group wanted to sit on. It's a specialist role. It's dry. It's difficult. You have to be pretty good with numbers and everything else to understand it. So it's not something that is easy to find people to sit on. I know from experience. And I've sat on audit and governance, and I thought, you know, it's hard. It's hard work. It's not one that, you know, some members are ideal for it, and others aren't. Steph, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was a strong proponent for increasing the size of audit and governance, and I still am. Or I see, but looking at the things, I see the complication in it, because I think 11 is too many. 9 is the ideal size, but then that affects proportionality. But I do think it still is a really, really important issue, because it might be quite dry for some and it might be complicated to get your head around it. But I think to have a couple more members on it, you've got a few more heads around it. And we have had issues with the finances and the governance arrangements. And I think we do need that to be strengthened. And I think it is important that we are doing our due diligence in that as much as we possibly can. And I think 7 just isn't enough, because it's just not enough heads around the table. And I agree with Declan strongly on the training. And I think that was raised when we had the meeting as well, when this was discussed, the full council meeting. However, I just don't see how it would work. I'd happily take the 9, the size 9 figure, although that puts out the balance slightly. But it only requires each group to find one more person. But the proportionality is slightly down. So I don't know how the Liberal Democrats would feel about that. But I still strongly think there needs to be some extra governance training and some heads around that table.
I think having training for people sitting on audit and governance is good, but it is a specialist, and I'm sure that if we added to that size, that there would be people that would be armed to sit on it, and their participation would not be as good as those that are there. And having seven members who are really willing and interested to sitting on it means that they can do that work. Bearing in mind, as Alistair said, it's the size of this committee. It's the same size as the cabinet. Is having 7 members. It covers you've got enough members and you've got them from all parties. I would say that a maximum of the current size is ideal, and it might change in a new council, but that's not. They never stay exactly the same, because it's always the proportionality that sometimes shifts things. That's why you sometimes see a committee meeting in one term being 10 or 11 or something like that, and then the next term it's either up or down. It's because of the way the electorates have voted in the membership of the council. Vicky, I think you were putting, or Declan.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. One way that we could increase the size is to try and find another independent member. I know it's difficult to do, because I know how long it took us to find our previous independent member, who I thought actually was quite good. He had a background in cybersecurity, of all things, so I found him quite useful. And one way you could possibly do that is to look at local university and see if there's a business school undergraduates who might want a bit of experience, and they could come with a fresh pair of eyes, or any accountancy students who live locally. I would try and find something along those lines, and I think that would bring somebody to the committee that would have some expertise to give, and also they would get some useful experience in return. It might be something that might be worth looking at.
Okay, I've got, Vicky, you had your hand up.
It was pretty much what Declan's saying. Do any of us groups know anybody who actually wants to do it? And then obviously Declan said about looking elsewhere.
Could we agree then that we retain the Audit and Governance Committee at the same size, which is 7 members? Have we got one independent member on there now?
Is it Lauren?
So the previous independent member resigned without notice. That sounds worse than it is, but they didn't give us any notice. They just said they were having to step down. So we are in the process of getting the recruitment live to replace that independent member. It will obviously take a bit of time, and as Councillor Wilson says, we do need to get the right person. So we just have to go out to recruitment and see what comes back with that. But we are working with ARA on that recruitment process. It should be live soon.
Well, let's get that recruitment sort of, you know, if it is somebody who's at a business school in the university, that's a good idea from there. But we need to, first of all, fill the independent place. So if we agree to fill the independent place, and I think the majority of the committee wants to retain the existing size of the committee as it's made up by elected members. Yep, good. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you. That's, I think, isn't it?
I was just going to say I'll take that section out of the report then, because we're not proposing to change anything.